At 6:42 in the morning, your alarm stops, and before your feet touch the floor, you are already inside someone else's life. You see a promotion announcement, a new apartment, a finished project, and a photograph that makes another person's morning look calmer and further ahead than yours. Nothing has happened to you. Yet within 3 minutes, your own day feels smaller. You begin measuring your unfinished work against someone else's public result. By the time you reach the shower, you are wondering what they know, who supports them, and whether you started too late. By 9 o'clock, you have spent more attention judging another person's direction than choosing your own. This is how a life quietly loses command, not through one dramatic collapse, but through repeated departures from the ground, where your choices can still produce evidence. You call it awareness. Much of it is unpaid surveillance of lives you do not govern. Before this is over, you will have a practical 7-day system for reclaiming your attention without becoming selfish, isolated, or indifferent. The hidden cost is not merely time, it is authorship. When another person's progress decides your mood, their opinion decides your confidence, or their reaction decides your next move, your life begins taking instructions from outside its own center. Focusing on yourself does not mean pretending other people do not exist. It means returning your attention first to the territory where your judgment, preparation, and conduct can change what happens next. Begin with one distinction. Information is not jurisdiction. Information tells you what is happening. Jurisdiction tells you what is yours to decide. You may need information about your work, family, finances, obligations, or relationships, but you do not have jurisdiction over another person's pace, opinion, loyalty, mood, ambition, or private interpretation of you. Which costs you more right now? Comparing your progress, monitoring someone's reaction, or worrying about how you are being judged? Keep your answer. It will show where your attention is most easily recruited. The moment you confuse information with jurisdiction, attention becomes anxiety. A delayed reply becomes a mystery you feel compelled to solve. A coworker's praise becomes a verdict on your value. Someone else's speed becomes the schedule by which your life is judged. But their pace is not under your command. Your next hour is. Your preparation is. Your standard is. Your response is. Your willingness to continue without applause is. That is the first move. When your mind enters another person's life, ask, is this information I need, or territory I am trying to govern without authority? If action is required, act. If no action is required, return. That question does not make you passive. It prevents you from spending real energy on imaginary control. Machiavelli was not writing about social media or personal wellness. In chapter 24 of The Prince, he examined rulers who lost their states and then hoped outside forces would restore them. His argument was political and historical. The opening quotation belongs to that context. Applied carefully as a modern analogy, the principle remains sharp. What depends entirely on rescue, approval, or external correction is never fully secure. A life becomes more reliable when its direction depends increasingly on your preparation, conduct, judgment, and repeated effort. This does not mean you need nobody. It means support should strengthen your movement, not replace your authorship. There is a particular exhaustion that comes from living before an invisible audience. You are not simply doing the work, you are imagining how it will look. You are not simply making a decision, you are preparing an explanation for people who have not asked. You are not simply resting, you are wondering whether someone else is using the same hour more effectively. The audience may be a parent whose approval still controls your choices, a former friend whose success feels like a verdict, a co-worker you quietly compete with, or an online crowd that never promised to care. Under this audience, private effort becomes performance. You choose goals that can be displayed, instead of goals that can be sustained. You announce plans before they have roots. You change direction when attention fades. You mistake being seen for moving forward. Because performance needs witnesses, silence begins to feel like failure. Yet the most important phase of almost any transformation is difficult to display. It is the week when you repeat the same basic task, and the month when progress is real, but not dramatic. It is the private morning when the old habit is available, but you choose differently, and nobody applauds. This is where focus becomes power, not because it makes you superior, but because it ends the negotiation between your purpose and their attention. But there is a trap here. Directing your focus inward does not mean staring endlessly at your feelings, flaws, and identity. That can become another distraction. Self-focus is not self-obsession. Self-obsession asks, how do I appear? What do they think of me? Why am I not further ahead? Self-command asks, what requires my attention now? What standard will I keep? What evidence can I create before this day ends? One circles the self, the other governs it. Many people stop comparing themselves with others, only to begin inspecting themselves every hour. They check whether they feel confident, whether motivation has arrived, and whether the new habit is already working. This constant measurement interrupts the process it is trying to evaluate. A seed does not become stronger because you dig it up each morning to inspect the roots. Growth needs review, but it also needs uninterrupted time. So build an internal scoreboard that measures conduct rather than emotion. Did you complete the block of work you promised? Did you protect the boundary you had already decided? Did you return after distraction? Did you make one decision your future self can trust? These questions are less exciting than asking whether you are winning. They are also more useful. The external scoreboard is crowded with variables you cannot control: timing, luck, visibility, other people's decisions, and the parts of their story you cannot see. The internal scoreboard is narrower. That is its strength. It measures whether you acted inside your jurisdiction. But an internal scoreboard matters only if it survives contact with other people. The moment credit, loyalty, conflict, or reputation enters the room, self-focus must become more than a private feeling. It must become disciplined action. At work, this changes how you respond to competition. Suppose a coworker receives credit while your contribution is barely mentioned. Focusing on yourself does not mean pretending the situation is acceptable, and it does not mean swallowing justified anger. It means refusing to spend the next week replaying their praise, as though resentment were documentation. Identify what happened, preserve evidence of your contribution, speak clearly to the person who can address it, improve the visibility of future work. Then return to building value. The goal is not to suppress anger, it is to convert anger into information and action. In family conflict, the same principle becomes a boundary. Someone may dislike your decision. They may call your limits selfish, dramatic, or unnecessary. You should listen for truth and correct yourself when correction is deserved. But once you have examined the facts, you cannot spend every evening trying to force another person to approve a boundary that exists, because approval was unreliable. Your responsibility is clarity, consistency, and proportion. Their emotional process belongs to them. In friendship, focusing on yourself may mean ending the habit of interpreting every silence. You wonder why they have not reached out, what changed, whether you should send another message, and whether your value has decreased. There may be a real conversation to have. Have it directly. Ask once, observe the pattern, and place your attention where reciprocity is visible. The point is not to punish anyone with distance. It is to stop using imagination to maintain a connection that reality is not maintaining. Online, the principle becomes even simpler. Create proof before consuming proof of other people's progress. Before the feed, write the page. Before the comparison, complete the set. Before the commentary, send the proposal. Before watching someone explain discipline, practice it for 20 minutes. This is not a moral law, it is an attention law. Whatever enters first often sets the emotional scale for what follows. When the first evidence of the day belongs to someone else, your mind begins in reaction. When it belongs to your commitment, your mind begins in authorship. But now the principle needs an ethical limit. Focus only on yourself can become a slogan for avoidance. A person can use it to ignore responsibility, refuse feedback, abandon people, or become indifferent to harm. That is not strength. You live among other people, and your choices affect them. Loyalty, cooperation, service, and care require attention beyond yourself. The real question is not whether you should care about others. It is whether caring has become an excuse to abandon your own judgment. Healthy focus allows you to listen without surrendering, support without assuming responsibility for every outcome, and collaborate without turning comparison into identity. It allows you to apologize without begging for permanent permission to move forward. It allows you to care deeply without making another person's approval the ruler of your life. Self-command does not close the door to others. It decides who is holding the handle. Which is harder for you to release? Someone else's opinion, someone else's progress, or someone else's response? Your answer points toward the place where focus must become a practice, not merely an idea. The deepest distraction is often not the phone, the crowd, or the coworker. It is the need to know where you stand in another person's mind. You want certainty. Are they impressed? Are they disappointed? Do they respect you? Do they think you are failing? So you collect tiny signals, a shorter reply, a missing invitation, a change in tone, or a compliment given to someone else. Then you build a private courtroom from incomplete evidence. You become the accused, the prosecutor, the witness, and the judge, while the real work remains untouched. The need to know what everyone thinks feels protective, but it creates vulnerability. It places your concentration at the mercy of signals that may be ambiguous, accidental, or irrelevant. The internal enemy is not curiosity. It is the demand for immediate emotional certainty. You want the message decoded, the relationship defined, the judgment corrected, and the future guaranteed before you continue with your day. But certainty purchased through constant checking is expensive. It gives temporary relief while training your mind to abandon its work whenever ambiguity appears. Self-command begins when you can leave some questions unanswered long enough to keep your promises. You do not need to become careless about reputation. Machiavelli understood that public judgment has consequences. But reputation is protected most reliably through patterns of conduct, not constant mind-reading. Do good work that can be shown. Keep agreements. Correct false claims when they matter. Speak with proportion. Document what needs evidence. Then allow some opinions to remain outside your reach. A reputation managed minute by minute becomes performance. A reputation built through consistent conduct becomes an asset. Now you need a replacement system. For the next 7 days, begin with one private objective, not 10. Choose one piece of progress that matters, even if nobody sees it. It may be a project block, a training session, a financial review, an application, a study period, a repaired routine, or a conversation you have been avoiding. Write it in language that can be verified. Do not write, "Work on myself." Write, "Complete 40 focused minutes," before checking social media. Do not write, "Be more confident." Write, "State my decision once," without adding an unnecessary defense. Do not write, "Stop comparing." Write, "When comparison appears, record one action available in my own life." The second step is to create proof before consumption. Each morning, produce a small piece of evidence before entering the public stream. 10 lines, 20 minutes, 1 page, 1 application, 1 clean surface, or 1 completed promise. The amount can be modest. The order is what matters. You are teaching your attention that your life is not the remainder left after everyone else has been observed. Do not turn this into another perfection test. Missing one morning does not erase the practice. The strategic response is not shame. It is a faster return. A system becomes trustworthy when it can survive interruption without becoming abandonment. Third, use 3 return questions whenever your mind becomes occupied with another person. What fact do I actually have? Is any action required from me? What deserves my next 20 minutes? The first question interrupts imagination. The second protects responsibility. The third restores direction. If action is required, take it clearly. If nothing requires action, bring your attention back. Do not hold another person's behavior in your mind as though continued worry were a form of work. Fourth, establish an opinion boundary. Decide whose feedback has earned weight. Not everyone with access to you deserves influence over you. Useful feedback usually comes from someone who understands the goal, sees enough of the situation, tells the truth with proportion, and wants your growth rather than your obedience. Listen carefully to those people. Everyone else may still have an opinion, but you do not need to turn it into a command. Fifth, review your internal scoreboard at night. Do not ask whether the day looked impressive. Ask whether you kept your selected promise, where your attention left its jurisdiction, what brought it back, and what needs one clear action tomorrow. Then stop reviewing. Useful reflection ends with direction. Endless reflection becomes another form of delay. Sixth, practice quiet continuity. Do not announce every correction or make a ceremony out of every new habit. Let some growth remain unobserved long enough to become stable. When people ask what you are doing, answer honestly. But do not borrow excitement from an audience before the work has learned to stand alone. Finally, choose one act of deliberate care for someone else. This may sound opposite to focusing on yourself, but it prevents the practice from shrinking into selfishness. Help without performing. Listen without absorbing responsibility for everything. Give without abandoning the promise you made to your own day. The goal is not a smaller heart, it is a stronger center. After 7 days, you may not feel transformed, but something measurable will have changed. You will have 7 pieces of evidence that your attention can return. You will notice comparison sooner. You will spend less time governing imaginary territory. You will begin to distinguish a real obligation from an emotional pull. Most importantly, you will become more believable to yourself. That self-belief will not come from repeating that you are powerful. It will come from memory. You noticed the pull, returned to the task, kept the boundary, and acted without waiting for the perfect feeling. That is what happens when focus stops being a mood and becomes a structure. Your life grows quieter, but not empty. Your decisions become less theatrical. Your progress becomes less dependent on witnesses. Other people's success can inform you without condemning you. Their disappointment can concern you without commanding you. Their silence can give you information without becoming your identity. You do not become unreachable. You become harder to recruit, away from your own judgment. Now return to 6:42 in the morning. The alarm stops. The screen is already holding new achievements and new invitations to measure your beginning against someone else's middle. The old impulse reaches for them, but this time, you notice the departure before it happens. You place the phone face down, not because those people are enemies, and not because their lives do not matter. You place it down because your life also requires a witness, and for too long, you have been absent from it. You open the work you chose the night before. For 20 minutes, nothing dramatic happens. No one applauds. No one knows. But one page becomes 2, one decision becomes evidence, and one morning begins from within. That is what truly changes when you focus on yourself. The world does not stop moving. Other people do not stop judging, succeeding, withdrawing, changing, or misunderstanding. You simply stop asking every movement outside you to decide the movement within you. What is one private promise you will protect for the next 7 days, even if nobody notices? Make it specific enough to prove. If this helped you see focus as self-command rather than selfishness, subscribe to the Machiavelli framework for modern lessons on discipline, human nature, boundaries, reputation, and strategic judgment. You do not reclaim your life by becoming the center of everyone else's attention. You reclaim it by becoming present in your own.